The next item is in the name of Deputy Seán Kyne. It's to the Minister for Agriculture, Food and the Marine, the need to evaluate the impact of factory fishing vessels on the fish stock management and the Irish economy. Okay, the Deputy has 4 minutes.
Good morning, and first of all I'd like to thank the Cancoller's office for choosing this topical issue. I'd like to welcome Minister Coveney to the Chamber. Minister, a lot of politicians, a lot of people talk about sustainable communities, whether it be sustainable farming communities, fishing communities, rural communities or coastal communities. What we have over the last number of years is unsustainable activities by super-trawlers. Unsustainable in many people's eyes in an Irish context, an EU context and indeed a world context. Today there are 4 large super-trawlers off the west coast of Donegal. The Marigus and the Annalise Elena, the largest and second largest trawlers respectively, who have been fishing on and off over the last number of years. Also the Jan Maria and the Marcia Theodora. It has been said that 2/5 of European stocks where data is available were considered to be overfished, and a further 45% of stocks were estimated to be in a similar situation. And this puts huge pressure on the small fishermen off the west coast. Having seen the careful rebuilding of the stocks in the Celtic Sea under the stewardship of the Celtic Sea Herring Management Advisory Committee, stocks there have, according to a 2012 report, recovered well, and the fishery operation was regarded as being at a sustainable level. And credit to yourself and everyone involved in that, and there was all the stakeholders came on board to ensure that that fishery recovered. However, recent surveys would highlight a concern about the present situation. These factory ships ran out of the west coast of Africa and indeed off the coast of Mauritius. The Annalise Elena, previously the Atlantic Dawn, was known in many parts of Africa as the sea monster or the ship from hell. Obviously, Minister, there was Irish connections to that trawler as well, though now it is Dutch registered. These ships have also been ran from Australia and New Zealand amid protests and intervention by politicians as well. Now, some people would say that these trawlers are fishing but have no quotas. Others would say that they have a small quota but that there are no controls. It has been said to me, why would a boat which has a quota for fishing off Ireland for 2 to 4 weeks for a certain species, i.e. 1 month, spend 9 months fishing Irish waters when they only have a quota of 1 month? Is it not reasonable to expect that these large trawlers would firstly announce to the Irish authorities that they were coming into Irish waters to fish? Secondly, that they may have camera surveillance on board to monitor activities. Thirdly, allow the Sea Protection Fishery officers to board to verify activities. And fourthly, that they will get out of Irish waters once their quotas are caught. We have full and some would say over control of our own fleet in terms of quotas per Irish boat, whereas other boats, such as Spanish boats, would have a national quota rather than a quota per boat, which makes it more difficult to verify, to monitor whether there is overfishing. Ultimately, you could ask, how is it fair and equitable that Irish boats will comply and others may not be doing so? This is ultimately about jobs and the economy, processing jobs such as in factories such as in Rossaville, jobs in our rural communities. The EU is supposed to be about fairness and equality. There are national quotas rather than quotas per boat. How can this be fair if there is no proper monitoring of landings in other areas, these Dutch or German registered boats? Is the EU turning a blind eye towards issues? Are there illegal activities going on? Do they target Irish waters, then get out before the Irish Navy can catch them? Are you confident that what is going on is above board, that the quota system and their compliance with it is above board, and that we have nothing to worry about?
Okay, thanks, Deputy Minister. 4 minutes.
Can I thank Deputy Kyne for raising this issue, because I know it is causing concern and frustration. I've had a lot of interaction, particularly in social media, on this issue, and I can assure you that it is not going unnoticed in my department and also amongst the agencies that have responsibility for enforcement of the rules. Control of the vessels within the Irish exclusive fisheries zone is a matter for the Irish control authorities, who monitor fishing activity of all vessels operating in the area. The control authorities have ongoing information in relation to vessels operating in the Irish exclusive fisheries zone, including their activities and characteristics. Under the Sea Fisheries Protection and Maritime Jurisdiction Act 2006, all operational issues of this nature concerning sea fisheries control are, as a matter of law, exclusively for the Sea Fisheries Protection Authority and the Naval Service. And as a Minister, I'm precluded from getting involved in the operational matters, including in relation to law enforcement. But obviously, I ask what's going on and make sure that they're applying the rules and regulations fairly and robustly. The SFPA has advised me that it is currently monitoring the activity of 4 large pelagic freezer trawlers within the Irish exclusive fisheries zone. Vessels with the scope to catch large quantities of fish with onboard grading facilities create specific compliance risk, therefore justifying specific focus of available control resources. For each of these, I am advised that the Sea Fisheries Protection Authority has clarified through contact with the flag state and with the flag state the entitlement of the vessel and has identified particular compliance risks pertaining to those vessels. Since arrival, the SFPA has been monitoring these movements in our fisheries zone through VMS and declared catches through ERS. In general terms, it advises that the declared catches have been consistent with a limited processing capacity that might exist in heavy weather. And it is heavy weather at the moment, to put it mildly. The SFPA is reliant on the seagoing fisheries patrol activity of the Naval Service to verify compliance of the vessels not landing into Ireland. Boarding vessels of this size at sea creates specific challenges, and to date the operational decision of the Naval Service has been that weather has been too severe in order to do that. But I think our record in relation to large super-trawlers has actually been pretty strong in the last 12 months. We've actually brought a number of vessels into Killybegs for full inspection and so on. So I really do want to, I have a long note here, and actually the Deputy will get it and can see the detail on it, but can I just reassure people of a number of things. First of all, Ireland has a very large fisheries area to patrol. It's 10 times our land mass in terms of surface. It is some of the most fertile fishing grounds in the world, not only in the European Union. It is a fishing ground that is shared amongst many international fleets. Irish boats catch about 20% of the catch. And it is our job and my job to make sure that the enforcement agencies of the state, the Naval Service and the SFPA, ensure that there are fair rules that apply to big and small boats, whether they're Irish owned or whether they're not, and to ensure in particular that boats that come into that zone to fish without actually landing in Ireland, because they actually have processing facilities on board, because they have the scale to do that, to ensure that they comply with the rules, that there's no grading, there's no discarding. And don't forget that the discards ban, which was introduced under the new Common Fisheries Policy, which Ireland actually chaired the conclusion of, actually now bans the discarding of fish in the pelagic sector and has done for the whole of this year. And we'll be introducing an obligation to land into whitefish species now from the 1st of January. So the rules are stringent and we will enforce those rules. At the moment we have extremely rough weather, which means it is virtually impossible for the Naval Service to board these vessels. If that weather changes, of course, that approach may change. But I can assure you, I know there's concern in relation to this area. Ireland too has some very large pelagic trawlers. In fact, some of the trawlers we have probably have a bigger capacity to catch in terms of a day catch than some of these large trawler vessels, because these large trawlers have to process as well as catch. So we have some very large vessels that fish in Irish waters and outside of Irish waters. But I know there is a concern when you see the scale and size of some of these vessels that are almost immune to stormy conditions like is there at the moment. And I want to assure people that we are monitoring what they're doing and where they are, and we want to enforce the rules strictly to make sure that they're not catching beyond the quota that they're allowed to catch within European waters.
I'd like to thank Minister for his reply and his reassurance. As I said, he's provided the data and I will have a more thorough read of it when I have when I leave here. You're right to say that there is concern. I've been contacted by a number of fishermen and those involved in the fishing community who obviously are aware of the presence of these super-trawlers. They're aware of the reputation that they have, and you're right to say that there are some Irish in there as well, and a history indeed of one of the largest ones being Irish, and the reputation that they've had in other parts of the world. Minister, do you have concern? Obviously you agree and you are strongly supportive of the Celtic Sea project, for example, in relation to sustainable fishing. Do you view these as being a threat to the sustainability of fish stocks in Irish waters, in European waters, and indeed across the world? Is that something that is raised at fisheries meetings? Is it something that you think should be looked at more? You say that the Irish waters are some of the most fertile in the world, and that 20% of the catch is by Irish boats. Obviously, it's for that very reason, because it is fertile, that it is attractive to other areas. And obviously, the more catch that is landed in Irish ports, the more jobs that are created in processing, and the more net value that there is to the Irish state. In terms of you mentioned the weather, and we know obviously that we cannot put anyone's lives at risk in terms of our naval services and in terms of boarding ships. There is a view out there that these boats target Irish waters when the weather is particularly bad, in order that they might be able to evade detection of the Irish Navy. Is this something that is just speculation? Is it something that you feel there is any evidence for, or is it something that you have considered or asked the Naval Service or the Sea Fishery Protection Officers?
Yeah, I mean, I think that first of all, the situation isn't as loose as may be suggested here. Boats have electronic logbooks now. So we will know what's being caught, what's being logged. Obviously, it helps to inspect, to be able to ensure that that is the actual position. We certainly know where the vessels are as soon as they enter Irish waters. We know exactly where they are. They're being monitored. If you go to Naval Headquarters in Haulbowline, they will show you a screen of all of the fishing vessels that are in Irish waters at any given time, and will have the flag and country that each of them are from. And also can access the logbook information from boats. So there is a lot of monitoring going on, but I think what people would like to see is the physical verification of that monitoring through inspections on board and boardings. We have multiple boardings every single day from the Naval Service. It's a tough job, but they do a good job. And they will board large vessels like this. In fact, they will probably target large vessels like this more than smaller vessels, because obviously there's more at stake potentially because of the volumes being caught, whether they be Irish boats or other boats. But people do need to understand, within the European Union, we share fishing grounds with other European Union member states. We negotiate in December of each year the quota within different fishing sectors. All right, around the Irish coast, just like we do across the Bay of Biscay, just like we do within the Mediterranean and up into the Baltic Sea, and so on. And there is and the quota that applies to each of those stocks in each of those zones is then divided amongst member states of the European Union in accordance with an agreed practice that has been going on now for many years. And so the fish that are being caught here will have to have a quota before they can be caught from a European member state that actually has a quota to catch fish, mackerel in this case, off the west coast of Ireland within this fishery zone area. So it's not like they're appearing, scooping up all of our fish and heading off without actually the quota to do that, a quota that has been given to them on the basis of scientific advice in terms of the state of the stock and the health of that stock, coming from ICES, who are the body internationally that actually make the scientific recommendations in terms of the health of mackerel stocks each year. So this is not anything out of the ordinary in terms of fish that has been taken from waters that we have responsibility for monitoring and managing from a fishery perspective. This is actually quota fish that are being caught by boats that are owned within the European Union and have a quota to catch fish in that zone. The issue for us is to make sure that they don't go beyond that quota, because of course, because of the scale and size of them, they have the capacity to go way beyond it if they chose to, and if there wasn't tight enforcement. But these large vessels have significant catch capacity, but they also know the consequences if they break the rules, which are significant. So because it's so stormy at the moment, it's very difficult for us to get on board and to reassure people by actually verifying the catch and matching that with the electronic logbook data and so on. But as soon as conditions allow for that, we'll certainly do that. Again, there is nobody who is more aware than me of the need to protect fish stocks as the minister responsible for the fishing industry. I hope that in the context of a new common fisheries policy and a negotiated common fisheries fund for Ireland, which is more than twice the size of any fisheries package that Ireland has ever had in the past, we're very serious about protecting Irish fishing interests. So if I felt that we had large super-trawlers that were abusing stocks in Irish waters, obviously I would act on that. But this is about enforcement, it's about information flow, and it's about transparency and keeping the rules. And as soon as we actually have weather that can allow us board these vessels, of course, if the Naval Service and the SFPA feel it's appropriate to do that, that's what will happen.